Bennet.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. It's good to see you again. Thanks for coming back. It won't surprise you to know that I'm going to start with drought, our 1,200-year drought in the Rocky Mountain West. We reintroduced our bill to protect our watersheds and do what needs to be done with our national forests, the Protect the West Act this week. But I was very pleased that we were able to work together to include $10 billion in the, when you combine the money in the infrastructure bill and in the Inflation Reduction Act for pre-fire mitigation, for forest health, for all of that. That's a big chunk of money. It's an unprecedented amount of money. It's a lot less than the $60 billion that we've spent the last 5 years fighting fires in the West. But as you know, and I know you know this, it's a much cheaper way of dealing with the issue that we're confronting. I wonder if you could just give the committee an update about how you guys are thinking about spending that money, getting it on the landscape, and making sure we make the most of what Congress has appropriated.
The first thing that we needed to do, Senator, was to identify where the most significant fire shed risk was in the West, and we have identified that in 21 priority landscapes, 250 fire sheds within those landscapes, roughly 45 million acres all told. We are in the process of investing nearly $1 billion over the next couple of years in 134 of those 250 fire sheds in an effort to try to mitigate and reduce the risk of catastrophic fire, which is a serious issue. So there is resource being spent there. There's also resource being spent in helping communities become more resilient to fire, fire-adaptive communities. That is also part of what we're doing. And finally, we're working to reforest. We have a fairly significant and pretty aggressive goal of doing hundreds of thousands of more acres of reforestation, and that project is also being funded because of what you all did on the Replant Act. So there's a variety of activities going on.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Look forward to staying in touch on all that. As the chair knows, like everybody else in this committee, I've had Farm Bill listening session after Farm Bill listening session. I think we've had 26 in Colorado so far, and we're headed to a record because people are really interested. And I want to thank you for coming out to Talbot Farms in Palisade for one of those early on. And there in that conversation with our producers, you know, you heard something I hear everywhere I go, you know, which are concerns about programs like EQIP and CRP and USDA rural development community facilities, the fact that they're exceedingly burdensome in many respects for Coloradans to access, slow to access, and sometimes it has to do with understaffing, sometimes it just has to do with the bureaucracy not getting back. And we've had this conversation before. You are fortunate, I think, and the country's fortunate to have you in this job a second time. And I just want to hear a little bit about what you're doing to make the place a little more customer friendly than it's been historically, and what we can expect to see coming forward.
When I came back to this job, there were 6,500 fewer people working at USDA than before. So first and foremost, I
mean, it's amazing. That's an amazing fact.
And the morale was very, very low. And so it was necessary for us to rebuild morale, and it was also necessary for us to rebuild the workforce. We are doing that. We are hiring more people in NRCS. We're hiring more people in the Farm Service Agency. We're hiring more people in rural development. We have made an effort through the budget to be able to hire more folks. It is a challenge. It is a challenge because our compensation system now today is not competitive. It is very difficult to keep people in some of these jobs. The private sector attracts them once they get a little training. And so it's not only recruiting people, it's also retaining people. But we're hiring more people, and that makes a difference. We're also looking at ways to simplify the application process. I mentioned the Farm Service folks simplifying the loan application. NRCS is doing the same thing with reference to the applications necessary to access these programs. The additional funding that you're providing under the Inflation Reduction Act is a big, big opportunity for us. We're going to continue to hire more people, and we're going to continue to put those resources to work. We know we have a backlog of needed conservation programs. This is going to allow us to address that backlog and allow us to target these resources in ways that will help drought-stricken areas, help advance climate-smart practices, improve soil health, all of that. So it's a concerted effort on our part to expand workforce. And finally, looking at ways in which we can leverage our resources by, and I mentioned this to Senator Lujan earlier, the importance of having outreach efforts beyond NRCS, having over 100 organizations helping us get the word out about existing programs at NRCS, how folks can access those programs, and guiding them through the process. And so that should also encourage and increase participation and increase our ability to leverage those resources.
I think with your leadership, we really have a chance to make a dent in this, and anything that we can do to help support that effort, we want to do. I don't know how long I'll be in this job. I have no idea, but I'd love to be able to go home and have a Farm Bill listening session where people are saying, we're actually seeing improvements on the ground because of what we're doing together here. The last issue I had, you mentioned CRP. I actually don't have a question about CRP except to observe that we feel like the prices for CRP in the heart of what was the Dust Bowl in Colorado don't make a lot of sense. I've raised that over and over again here. But I did want to mention CREP it also, because in the 2016-18, when the last Farm Bill, I secured a provision to allow for dryland farming in the Conservation Reserve Enhancement Program, CREP. Since then, we've been working to secure a secretarial waiver, and I know you're well aware of this issue. This is critical for Colorado's Republican River Water Conservation District to meet its compact alliance. I'm sorry that Senator Marshall has left, because I know he knows how important this is between Kansas and Nebraska, and more important for all states facing dwindling water resources to maintain the production flexibility that we need while still conserving water. And I wonder if you could commit, Mr. Secretary, to approving a waiver for dryland farming in the CREP program and ensure that rural areas are not, rural rates are not so low that it discourages program participation.
We are actually working on the project in your state specifically. The challenge is and we've doubled the rates that would normally be paid for a CREP, and so we are trying to adjust those rates in a way that is feasible and could be applied not just to one particular project, but to CREPs throughout the region.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. And Senator Bennet, I appreciate your leadership and Senator Marshall's